Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for that introduction. I'm Rebecca from World Wildlife Fund, and I'm going to be talking today about the importance of preventing secondary sources of microplastic in the environment. So it was brought up yesterday, but just to briefly reiterate the distinction between primary and secondary microplastics. So primary microplastics are those that are that kind of less than 5 millimeter in size when they enter the environment, whereas secondary microplastics are those that degrade over time, so initially larger, but are degrading due to environmental conditions and end up being those smaller pieces. So just to set up some high-level context in terms of why we're working on this and how World Wildlife Fund sees this issue, global concern regarding plastic pollution is really at a peak right now. It's estimated that 8 million metric tons of plastic enter the ocean every year, and this number is projected to increase in the future as economies and population continue to grow. So, of course, we're interested in preventing the negative impacts that this pollution has on communities and on the environment. And this has prompted a wide array of actions from many stakeholders, so everything from policy action from governments, corporate sustainability commitments and action plans, to individuals really kind of thinking about how they consume and changing behavior on an individual level. So to frame up some of the kind of big picture challenges that our materials system faces, and plastics being one part of this, there's several kind of really complex things going on. So one of them is a lack of infrastructure. We also have some market issues where there are perverse incentives. So waste generation is either kind of being ignored or rewarded. And additional problems can include, the challenges of collecting and processing waste. So insufficient waste management is a primary driver of plastic pollution and plastic in the environment. And these factors are why today only a small portion of the materials we use are recycled, reused, and recovered. But on a more positive note, we see a future where we're addressing these issues through actions like sound policy, infrastructure improvements, coordinated collective action, since this is really a system-wide problem, engagement at the community level, as well as investment. So to kind of meet these challenges, World Wildlife Fund has this overarching goal of no plastic in nature by 2030. And we really have an array of kind of programs and activities to meet this goal. You can see here some of the primary pillars that we're engaging on. So we're working with cities on areas like innovation and improvements in recovery. We're collaborating with companies on setting sustainability commitments and following through on those. We're engaging on policy at international and national levels. And then we're also engaging with the public, so through campaigns, awareness-raising activities, and others. So one program that I'm going to be focusing a little bit on today is Resource Plastic. So this is one of our kind of key ways of engaging with the private sector on the plastic pollution issue. Resource Plastic is an activation hub that helps companies translate these sustainability commitments that they've made on plastic pollution into measurable and widespread action and change. So hundreds of companies have set targets related to packaging sustainability, and other kind of elements of plastic sustainability. They're ready to take action. So Resource Plastic is enabling, setting up that environment to really amplify those commitments and lead to meaningful change. The program has a few kind of specific goals that we're working towards. So first, we're focusing on increasing recovery of plastic through recycling and composting. Second, we're working towards 100% sustainable inputs for the remaining plastic. So for example, through increased use of recycled content and sustainably sourced bio-content. And finally, we're working to eliminate unnecessary plastic, so reduction in cases where it doesn't create kind of a significant environmental or social trade-off. Highlighted here, you can just see some of the areas that we're working on directly, as well as others that we seek to influence. To set up some context in terms of the potential scale we hope to achieve with this initiative, we conducted an analysis of 100 top companies, so primarily fast-moving consumer goods, but also some retail and other industry players. And we estimated the potential mismanaged plastic we could hope to address by engaging with them. So we used information on their revenue, their industry type, and potential mismanaged plastic. And we estimate that through engaging with the top 100 companies, we have the ability to address 10 million metric tons of mismanaged plastic annually. So this is equivalent to about 333,000 humpback whales. So you can see that the private sector is a really significant lever for change on this issue, and there's a lot of potential to address plastic pollution through this engagement. So we launched in May 2019 with our principal members and our thought partners, Ocean Conservancy and Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So really key features of the Resource Plastic Program are measurement and implementation. So we require that members set public and time-bound commitments related to those goals of the program that I mentioned earlier, and they commit to kind of measure their progress on those through a baseline as well as tracking their progress annually. So just to take a little bit of a step back and explain some of the context and how WWF looks at the materials issues. So we look at materials issues with a one planet perspective. So essentially what that means is we want to be conscious of trade-offs that can occur when you consider either alternatives, substitutions of plastic, or reduction of plastic. So as was mentioned yesterday, plastic does have really key roles in certain industries. So for example, preventing food waste and food packaging, ton of applications in the medical industry and more that, I won't go into right now. But essentially we want to ensure that when you consider how to best reduce plastic pollution, you don't just relocate the environmental impact to another material. So you can see here some of the common kind of alternatives that could be considered. I'm not going to go into each one in detail, but of course they all have pros and cons. So that could relate to things like greenhouse gas emissions potential, water use, their ability to be recycled, recovered in local infrastructure, as well as how they can meet safety and other kind of performance criteria. So this is just to say to kind of keep this context in mind in this discussion about plastic pollution. And we advocate for really thoughtful consideration of these trade-offs, and it's important to ensure that design is for recovery in local infrastructure as well. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about one of the key tools of our Resource Plastic Program, which we're rolling out right now. It's called the Resource Footprint Tracker. So this tool is focused on consolidating information around plastic use at the corporate level and estimating the likely fate of that plastic use based on waste management practices in countries of operation. So you can see here some of the questions that the tracker is designed to help us answer. So to what extent are products and packaging contributing to the plastic waste problem? How are interventions contributing to progress against commitments over time? And of course, also, as I mentioned earlier, we also want to target those kind of opportunities for amplification through collective action. So there's two key pieces of the Resource Footprint Tracker. There's a survey that companies use to enter data on their plastic use for products. And then that information is fed into a fate model, which estimates the likely fate of that plastic. So where do we think that plastic is most likely to end up? We do this using the best available data on waste management at the national level. For fates like recycling, how much is being incinerated, how much is going to landfill, and how much is likely to be mismanaged. There's also a beyond supply chain portion of the tool through which companies can input information about additional activities they're doing beyond their own supply chain, cleanup activities, infrastructure investments, things of that nature. So this just shows a little bit more detail about how we're going to use the tracker to help companies measure progress over their own sustainability commitments, as well as those key goals. So whether it's related to shifting to sustainable inputs for plastics, eliminating unnecessary plastics, and looking at kind of volume over time and proportion, and then increasing recycling and composting. So we're intending and hoping to use this tool to really direct action. So where are the potential hotspots where there's the greatest opportunity for mitigation? Where does more data need to be collected? And which opportunities are ripe for multi-stakeholder collaboration? So I hope this has been useful. I think I'm very much ahead of time, which is great. Just a few things to kind of close this, and then happy to answer questions in the panel. In terms of what's coming next for us, we'll be releasing our first public baseline in May 2020 of our members. After that, we'll be rolling out a web tool of the tracker and continuing to align with our key thought partners and thinking through how this work aligns with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation Global Commitment, which is another really big platform and commitment platform in this space. We're also advocating for the importance of robust kind of national level reporting on waste management, because that information is so key to understand those opportunities for mitigation. So for any companies that are interested to collaborate or considering joining, we're happy to chat with you. Please do reach out. And for individuals who are looking for a way to get involved, please do look up our advocacy work on legally binding treaty for stopping plastic pollution at the international level. So thank you so much, and look forward to the panel.